For centuries, the religious landscape of India has been defined by ancient indigenous traditions. Reaching into this environment with a highly formalized Western religious structure creates an immediate, audible friction. Historically, early Christian movements in the country were anchored to coastal cities, where the faith was heavily defined by English vocabulary and European cultural norms. As this presence moved inland, away from the colonial hubs and into the rural, Hindi-speaking belt of the north, the cultural terrain shifted completely. When an idea is inextricably bound to an alien cultural vocabulary, it often hits a wall in traditional rural communities, struggling to find a meaningful point of entry. This disconnect is most visible in the state of Chhattisgarh, a region characterized by remote, off-grid villages and rigid social hierarchies. Any attempt to establish roots here faced three dense, overlapping barriers: strict caste boundaries, intense local opposition, and high rates of illiteracy. Traditional leadership models and literal word-for-word translation of texts proved ineffective. The formal academic training that worked so well in urban seminaries offered no practical solution for the realities of tribal life. Attempting to maintain a foreign structure in this landscape often led to immediate social friction. To survive and persist, the faith would have to adapt to the local environment or face being ignored entirely. In the early 1990s, the Indian state broadcaster, Doordarshan, acted as the primary engine for cultural integration. A Sunday morning primetime slot commanded the attention of the entire country. This was the platform chosen for Bible Ki Kahaniyam, a television series designed to introduce biblical stories to a mass audience of up to 100 million people. While the initial viewership was massive, the audience vanished almost entirely after the second episode. Viewers found the dialogue essentially incomprehensible. Scriptwriters deployed heavily Sanskritized Hindi, mixing in dense Arabic and Persian loanwords. Confused viewers across North India asked if they were listening to the Quran. This prompted internal debate among broadcasters regarding whether such formal language was appropriate for the general public. Local leaders in the north realized that these traditional translation methods were creating a sense of otherness that actively pushed the audience away. When a message is delivered through an incompatible linguistic framework, the good news is transformed into a series of alienating, incomprehensible sounds. While the national broadcast faltered, a localized approach began to take shape at the grassroots level in Chhattisgarh, where leaders initiated a quiet cultural shift. To reach off-grid villages, local networks began distributing rugged, solar-powered audio devices to illiterate pastors. These devices bypassed the literacy barrier entirely. Direct auditory transmission allowed for teaching without any reliance on written books or formal schooling. Alongside this technology, there was a deliberate shift in music. Western hymns were largely abandoned in favor of indigenous bhakti traditions. Leaders began repurposing local Satnami musical structures. They used the familiar rhythmic call-and-response formats as a primary tool for memorization and teaching. They also integrated local devotional vocabulary, adopting terms like the Persian Khuda for God and Sanskritized concepts like Dharm Vignan directly into daily worship. In modern Hindi Christian songs, traditional Western lyrical structures have been replaced by these localized rhythms and sounds. By speaking and singing in the exact cadence of the village, the faith moved past the cultural resistance that had previously blocked its progress. This strategy of using existing auditory and musical frameworks allowed the faith to embed itself into the cultural subconscious of the region. This process of cultural adaptation is mirrored in the ancient vision of Ezekiel's Valley of Dry Bones. The core logic of the vision is that a structural skeleton remains dead until it is animated by breath, muscle, and flesh. In this context, the rigid theological structures functioned like the bones. The necessary breath and muscle came from the local syntax, the solar-powered audio, and the familiar rhythms of bhakti music. For a foreign ideology to persist, it cannot simply be translated word for word. It must be completely reincarnated into the physical and cultural body of its host environment. Today, this shift has resulted in millions of adherents in North India, who worship entirely outside the Western English-speaking paradigm. This evolution produced an indigenous Indian faith, operating with its own distinct linguistic and musical markers. The survival of this movement shows that a religious idea is only as resilient as the language and rhythms it adopts from the people who hold it.